ruffles are in place on our girl, let's add her collection and complete our quilt. Gather together the collection that you would like to stitch onto the ruffles. I'll either use the background color of my quilt to determine the collection, or I'll find one piece that is the inspiration for the rest of the collection. So I've gathered together far too much for one girl, but it's a great start for what to pull from to add to my girl. Now I'm going to lay out all of the pieces of my collection. I usually start with the one piece that ties everything together, and in this case I had gathered together a lot of charms and bits and pieces that were related to travel and finding, and so I found this tag that says wander on it, and I'm going to add it on the top layer off to one side. I'm going to begin to figure out where to place the rest of the charms, the ribbon, the lace, fabric scraps on my quilt. I like to try to have an odd number of items per layer. You can have your embellishments tuck up under layers or hang down below the layers. Arrange and rearrange your collection until you have exactly the right layout that you're looking for. You're basically building another collage. So I've got everything arranged on my layers. With white crochet thread and a needle, I'm ready to begin stitching. I'll take a photo of the layout, or I'll set everything off to the side in rows so I'll know where things should be placed. I'm going to start with the bottom layer. I usually pin the layer above out of the way so it's easier to stitch everything down without having the other layer in the way. So for this big charm, there's already a loop there. I'm just going to push the needle through the quilt and through the hole of the charm and then tie a square knot. For buttons, I'll either hide the knot on the back of the layer. A lot of times I'll stitch from the top down and tie the knot on top of the button. I like that look. Continue to stitch everything to the ruffles or through the back of the quilt. You can use thread to stitch ribbon to the ruffle. For brads, I poke them through the layer and then open the tines to secure them. I'll whip stitch the lace in place. I'll use loops of thread to let the charms hang lower on the layer. Add hand stitching, consider cross stitching or running stitches. Pin safety pins directly to the ruffle. You could also hang a charm from a safety pin. Stitch fabric directly to the ruffle or directly to the quilt. Add more hand stitching. As you stitch things to the quilt, you can decide that maybe you want to add more, which is what I've done. I want one more embellishment on that layer. I decided to clip a clothing tag to the ruffle. Loops of ribbon can be tied together and stitched to the ruffle. You can stitch ribbon as if it were thread onto the bottom of a ruffle. And I'm adding the last charm in place. Decide it needs a little color, so I'm adding some ribbon. And there we have it. Our collection has been added to the girl. I like to add a sentiment to my quilt to describe what the girl is thinking, feeling, or why she selected this collection. So I take a piece of muslin and iron it to fusible webbing. And I grab a notebook and jot down some ideas about what this girl is thinking or feeling, why she picked this collection. Some options would be she wanders the world in search of treasure. She collects shiny bits on her travels. All things blue make her heart sing. Her collection cannot be contained in a box. I'm kind of leaning toward she wanders the world to find treasure. I use a micron pen to write a sentiment directly onto fabric, trim out the full sentiment, and determine where to place it on my quilt. Remove the release paper and iron the sentiment in place. And then outline stitch around the sentiment with white thread to secure it to your quilt top. And there we have it. The sentiment is on our quilt. And if you didn't attach the hangers when you bound your quilt, you'll need to attach hangers. I use the same spiral paper clips to add hangers to my quilt. And I just whip stitch them to the back of the quilt, being sure that I don't stitch through to the front. So you want to stitch through the batting and the backing, but not through to the front. And my hand stitching for this is no way perfect. The goal here is utility, just to keep them in place. And there we have it. Our girl is complete. Our quilt is ready to hang on the wall. And all those little bits and doodads we've had tucked away are now front and center on our quilt. I hope you've enjoyed this workshop. I look forward to seeing your completed Magpie Girl Art Quilts. Send me photos. I want to see what they look like. Ask any questions. I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to see more of my work, visit believemagic.com. Bye!